And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Howdy folks, today we're going to be taking a look at a game called Spirits of the Rice Paddy. Now Spirits of the Rice Paddy is a game about, well, planting and growing rice paddies. And what attracted me to this, besides the really nice artwork and the seemingly cool theme, was that Philip Dubarry designed it, and I really enjoyed several of his games that I've played in the past. So I was very eager to take a look at this one, where you run your own rice paddy. This game is all about controlling water, letting the water go into your rice paddy and then letting it go out. Having spent 10 years of my life in Korea and living near rice paddies, this is an interesting subject to me. Let's see if the game is fun. The object of this game is to get the most rice, and this is basically the currency of the game. And you're going to get rice by harvesting it, and you're going to be doing so on your own rice paddy that you'll have. Each person has a rice paddy. Now you can't tell here, but these boards have recessed spots here, so you're going to be able to place walls down. This is going to be able to create rice paddies in this area. These black ones are gates. You also start with some people here that you'll be able to hire later on, and some animals. Players will have a bunch of workers that they'll be starting with. They will also get some other things. Each person is going to draw a setup card. This will show you where some rocks are placed. You can't use places where rocks are in until you remove those rocks. It also tells you what you start with. So, for example, this player starts with 15 rice and then 4 walls of their choice. You also see there's some built-in walls on the board. And each of the setup cards is differently. So this one here gives you only 4 rice, 3 walls, but you also start with one of these animals, the top one. Each animal is either a bird or is an ox, and you can flip and choose it any way you want. Now, the game is going to take place over 7 rounds. 7th round is a little bit different, but the first 6 rounds are pretty much the same thing. Before rounds 1 through 3, you're going to be drawing from this deck of cards that are numbered from 1 to 20 and drafting, which means you're going to pick one and then take the other 2, pass them to someone else, and then they'll pick one and then pass a third one. And players are going to have these cards in their hands, and they're going to be using those on rounds 1 through 3. Then in the second 3 rounds, players will be drafting from a different pile from cards 21 to 40. At the beginning of each round of the game, each player is going to choose a card to play. Whoever has played the highest card is going to go last. The lowest card is going to go first. In future turns, when you play an extra card, we're going to look at both your cards. So for example, if I played a 2 on my first turn, then a 15, my opponent plays an 18 and a 5, we compare our highest numbers. So I would still be going before this player here because my highest number is still lower than their highest number. And that's a way to determine turn order. When you play these cards, sometimes they're a one-time bonus. For example, Livestock Blessing gives you an animal. Stone Blessing gives you some walls. Foreman gives you a person. Others give you different special abilities. For example, animals can be used as people for removing weeds. Or this one here, your market tax is reduced a step. And these will especially get different as the game goes by. We're going to come back and show those to you a little bit later after I go over how the gameplay works. Now what players are going to be doing at the beginning of each round of the game is they're going to be placing workers and or animals that they have on these different spots here on the board, determining where they want to go. So you'll be placing them next to the different spots that you're going to put them on. Before players do that though, a rain card is going to be revealed. This rain card, first of all, tells you how much water is going to be available that round. So we have a bunch of rainwater that might show up. There might be a special thing that happens. So here, your largest planet paddy or grown paddy is going to get some bugs in it, which is problematic. But this is the amount of rainwater that comes in. This rainwater goes to the first player. So that's one reason you might want to go first. That person's going to place it in their reservoir. Now players are going to take turns as this game goes by, and they're going to be going down through these farm actions. The first thing you do is for every 3 people or for every animal, you can build walls. So if you have walls, you can just take walls or gates, they're the same thing, and place them out here on the board. You can also use animals to remove rocks that are on the board. Then there's a water removal process, and this starts with the first player. That player is allowed to drain any of their fields that they want to. They don't have to. If they drain a field, the water that drains from that field, they can either drop it into a lower field, or, and that's what the gates are for. The water will always has to flow through. However you set your gates up, the water is going to flow in one direction. You can drop it to a lower field, or you can just drain it completely, in which case that water goes to the reservoir of the second player, the player who's after you. And if you're the last player, your water just drains out to the ocean. Then players can use workers to remove weeds. You can only do that where there's no water. They can use animals to remove pests, again, where there's no water, all these actions. They can use animals to also fertilize fields that have been planted. So if this is a planted tile here, so if it's planted, and then they can use that for every 2 workers. If there happens to be a completely grown one, they can harvest. Again, you got to drop the water out to do it. Also, you have to do the whole thing. So, for example, this one's not finished, but let's say this one was. This is an entire rice paddy. For anything to happen, all the rocks need to be out of that. And if I'm going to harvest it, I would need to harvest both at the same time. I can't just harvest part of it. After that, players have the option of putting water in their things. So let's say it was my turn. I might say, okay, I'm going to drop water in these 2. And then this is leftover water, goes to the next player. Then they add that to the reservoir and keep going. So if you're last, there's a chance that you won't have enough water to put in all your fields. After players put the water in their fields, if they have any planted ones, they automatically grow. So next turn they can be harvested. And for each worker they put here, they can plant in a field that has water in it. And so that's what's going to happen, and players are going to keep doing it. Now, after players have all done all these different actions in those orders, then players are going to be able to take a tile over here. This is in turn order if you meet one of these things. So for example, if you have a 5 hex paddy in your farm, you can take this tile. It's worth 15 rice. Or if I have 5 hexes in my farm that contain water or magic water, I get points. Once players are done taking those, if they can take one, they can sell their rice. And you're going to look here. So let's say I have a 4-section rice paddy. I'm going to get 35 rice if there's nothing in it. If there's weeds in it, I'm only going to get 15. So that's how you're going to determine it. So these gray numbers that are after the black numbers are only used in the final 7th round, when you're basically just shutting your whole farm down and harvesting everything. If your farm is fertilized, it will count as the next one. So if you're 3 and it's fertilized, you would be using the 4 column, and then 5 has an extra column here in case a 5 or greater one is fertilized. After players do that, they go on to the next phase. Now that you've seen a little bit about how this works, you can see how these cards can be really useful. For example, this one, this Bountiful Yield, if you've played this one, you're going to get an extra 5 rice for every paddy that you harvest. This Crafty Spirit makes all your other cards that you've played already that are one-shots go off again. This one, I can plant without any workers. This one here, I get 3 magical water. Now, magical water has these stars on it so that it looks a little bit different. But magic water you can put into a hex in your area, and that you can say the hex has water or not water whenever you want. You basically can just decide whether there's water or not in it. You got some of the cards will occasionally affect other players. For example, a worker thief. You send 1 worker from each player back to the market. There's other here. Your paddies do not need water to grow, so you no longer need water for paddies to grow. You can also have your own achievement tiles. Rather than using the ones that everyone's using, you can have your own. Here, planet and water paddies will immediately grow. So you can see there's all kinds of special things that you can do here. At the end of the player's turn, they'll also be able to pay and buy more workers and buy more animals. The cost of each is printed above them, and if you buy more than one, then you have to pay a tax. So for example, if I buy 3 different things, I have to pay their cost plus 9. And that is essentially how the game works. At the end of the game, you're going to count up all the rice that you've gotten, and whoever has the most rice is the winner. Huzzah! The game is fun. There's a lot of cool things in this game. First of all is the formation of the game itself. Now, there's a couple production things that I don't like. I do like that the board is recessed here. I don't like that the board's warped a bit. Now that's easy enough, you can bend them back in position. More annoying, I think, is the fact that these growing tiles are really small and the water tiles are big and you're supposed to put the water on top of them. I would have preferred these tiles to be as big as the hexes here so you could see if the field was planted or not. These are minor things. Other than that, I like the little wooden weeds and the little wooden bugs, and all that stuff is cool, and the rice are big chunky chips, and the art throughout the game is fine. The water has this kind of Asian woodcut feel to it. That's great. Again, the water flowing into the fields and out of the fields is a really fascinating concept, especially because it makes turn order so important. Because if you go first, you get all the water you want. If you go last, you're hoping to get all the water you want. You might not get it all. And you also have to decide whether to build a giant paddy, which is great. I mean, it gives you a ton of rice if you can pull it off. But you have to fill that whole thing with water. You got to have enough workers to get the whole thing planted. Then you got to take all the water out and then fill it back up again. So it's really interesting how this water ebb and flow, and maybe the rain cards are going to cause less rain to come. Let's say you're playing a 4-player game. In this one, 6 rain comes, then 7, and this one 9, and this one 5. There's a big difference between 5 and 9 water showing up. And so that I think that concept is really intriguing. The game has a little bit of the take that. In fact, the rule book has a rule that says if you don't like it, you can take it out. But I don't really see any point to that because, first of all, the take that's more akin to it's not really hard, right? It's like, ooh, stick a weed in someone else's field. Okay, that's annoying, but they can easily handle that. You saw the one I showed you. Get rid of a worker. Okay, that's annoying, but, we can fight past that. Especially since I know by you making me get rid of a worker, you didn't take something else that was cooler. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I really, really, really like this game. This game reminded me a bit of Marco Polo that I reviewed earlier in 2015. Marco Polo was a Euro game doing this Euro game stuff. But you each had a special power, where my power was so much better than everyone else's, at least until I saw their power, and I was like, no, wait, yours is better than mine. That is exactly how this game is. When you do this drafting, especially in this part 2 of the game, you're going to get the cards and be like, this is amazing. Well, this is amazing. Which of these cards do I want to keep? Some of them are better than others, but the ones that are better than others have a higher number. And remember I said turn order was important? Well, these cards are fascinating, and you can get some pretty cool combos. My daughter Melody, in one game, she got a combo where she did not need water to plant or to harvest. So eventually she got to the point where she didn't need water. It was amazing for her. And that was a pretty powerful combo that she pulled off, while having that magic order is a great ability, or having to need fewer workers, or having your animals. I mean, just you can look at the cards, you're like, wow, I want this, I want that one, I want this one, and that's to me that makes the game so much fun. I love games that give you choices like this. Drafting is fun anyway, but I love the fact that when you get these, you're like, this is amazing. Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Why aren't more games like that? Because that makes games fun when you're like, sit there and say, I am able to do something really cool. Now, this does bring a bit of this mystical theme into this game. Well, it is called Spirits of the Rice Paddy, but it's, there's magic water. You don't even need water to grow stuff. You can do this with something else, There's all sorts of, hardy rice and soil blessings, and that's an interesting terminology. Duck training. Ducks can now work in flooded paddies, Just silly stuff, but it works well with the theme. I personally think I like the game with all the counts of players, although 4 I think is the most interesting because that water flow has to go through 4 steps. So you might get great cards, but you are going last in turn order. You really have to kind of calculate that. The game is not very long. The special tiles will make each game different. A really solid, cool game. One I highly recommend, Spirits of the Rice Paddy. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!